Welcome to the Better Not Perfect podcast, season 2, or welcome back if you joined us in season 1. Either way, we're so glad to have you. I am Dr. Shai Butler, and I am the author of Better Not Perfect: From Hot Mess to Life Success, a woman's guide to learning, loving, and being herself unapologetically. I am also the creator of the Better Not Perfect podcast, of which you joined today. So I am so excited. Season 2, I get to bring to you remarkable women, women who have been a part of my better journey, some new friends, some longtime friends, and who've poured into me through the years as supporters, as mentors, encouragers. And today I have a very special guest with me, Cheryl Schimmel, who is a professional in the mental health and counseling field. She's also a wife, a mom, and a grandmom of 3.
Mhm.
And Cheryl has been in my social circle for about a decade now, I would say. Yeah, and it's just been great. You've really sort of been a great coach, mentor, and friend to me. So
Mm.
I'm just so pleased that you said yes to this
Oh,
invitation.
well, thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's great. It's just great to sit with you and talk about important things.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you what I'm asking all my guests this
Mhm.
season. When you hear better, not perfect,
Mhm.
what does that mean to you?
Immediately, my mind goes to the not perfect part because I've struggled with perfectionism most of my life
Mm.
and in a toxic way, not in a, I'm going to be an overachiever, this is great, but in a toxic way that has harmed me and harmed those around me as I've demanded perfection of those around me as well. So, when I've been engaging in the book and reading and just realizing through your story, um, the parts that resonate, or the need to be vulnerable and the need to really understand that none of us are going to get to that place of perfection, and that's okay. It's actually healthy for us not to. And that just centering in on the not perfect and giving myself permission to be not perfect, even though, in our minds, I think we know that, we understand that we can't be perfect, but there's this drive, there's this drive to try to make that happen, to overcome deeper insecurities and deeper inferiority. So for me, that's what stands out the most, just the not perfect, permission to be not perfect, and I love
Wow.
that.
Wow. Thank you for that. And you know what I immediately thought of is in dropping not perfect,
Hmm.
we become better,
Right.
you
It's so
know?
true.
It
Pressure's
is.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's just it. The pressure for years,
Hmm.
for me, self-flagellation, always beating myself up.
Hmm.
Oh, well, you did that wrong, or you did this wrong.
Hmm.
Um, there would be times when I would just wake up in the morning, and the first thought that comes into my mind is what I didn't do, what I
Right.
didn't accomplish,
Hmm.
whether it's, oh, you left those dishes in the sink, or, oh man, you really put your foot in your mouth yesterday, or, and I still struggle with that.
Hmm.
I still struggle with how do I set myself up on a course of the day
Hmm.
where I am engaging in positive thoughts
Hmm.
and positive affirmation.
Right.
And that has just been a lifelong struggle for me.
Mm.
Yeah. It didn't start, however,
Mhm.
and Dr. Shea, the adult,
Mhm.
it really, I've learned, and I've talked about this with my therapist. I have learned that, you know, in my youth, it really started for me as a child.
Mm.
And I've talked, and the audience knows, those who've read the book and those who've watched season 1 of the podcast know that in my early years, I lost a dear grandmother to cancer. I was vulnerable, isolated, and alone, and as such, I was really victimized. Um, got pregnant at 13, had a baby at 14, started college at 16, failed out of college by 18. And so life's ups and downs, I've faced them. But
Mhm.
through those early formative years and those teenage years, I found that's the root, that's the seed where
Mhm.
perfectionism started for
Mm.
me,
Mhm.
because the blowback that I received
Yeah.
from all of those things. And one of the things that I've learned, and I've said to audiences before when I'm talking, is that failing at something doesn't make you a failure.
Right,
And I've
right.
had to learn that. I've been on this
Yeah.
journey of not labeling myself failure.
Mhm.
And you can have as many degrees, you can have as many children, however you define success, you can still believe
Mm.
that you're a failure.
Right.
And that is just bizarre to me,
Mhm.
you know?
Right. How that can just be so deeply embedded.
Yeah.
Right. And I really think it comes down to, the flip side of the perfectionistic coin is shame, right?
Mm.
And I
Yes.
know on your podcast and your book, you speak to the idea of shame, and the acronym I like for shame is self-hatred at my expense.
Oh,
And
say
that,
say that again for the audience, Cheryl. I
yeah,
mean, they've been.
shame, the acronym for shame is self-hatred at my expense. And it always costs us, and it always takes a toll on our mental health. And I think if as a therapist, I think if I had to only name one thing that I see as being an epidemic, is shame, is this idea that I'm not enough.
Mm.
Guilt says I didn't do the right thing. Shame says I'm not the right thing.
Mm. Wow.
And I think that
Wow.
that's the flip side of perfection. I think perfectionism is our attempt to try to the antidote to try to calm the shame, to
Yeah.
calm the self-hatred, to still it. And it doesn't really work. And so that's why, people turn to other things to calm that loud voice that
Mhm.
says, you're not enough.
Right, right. And central to me too, I don't know if fear preceded the shame,
Hmm.
and the guilt, or if fear was a result of the shame and the guilt.
Mm,
And maybe sometimes it's betwixt in between,
yeah.
But and there's an acronym for fear that I love, and it's false evidence appearing real.
Mm, mhm.
Um, or um, another way is freak everything and run.
That works too.
Yeah, yeah, however you're going to respond, whatever your lens is,
Right, right.
it's either, fear is this false evidence that just feels so real to me. It's appearing real.
Mm,
And as a result, I may say, well, frig it and run,
right,
just run.
right, right.
And for me, I talk openly in the book about
Yes,
my struggles with
you
addiction
do.
and,
It's wonderful.
substance use. And
Mhm.
at the core of it, I've learned is guilt, shame, and fear
Mhm. Mhm.
that surfaced, that probably lived in me as a child and in those formative years when trauma happened,
Mhm.
but really surfaced
Mhm.
as an adult. Um,
Mhm.
and I would say, didn't really, I talk about in chapter 1 called A Hot Mess,
Mhm.
where I had everything going for myself from the exterior. On the outside, I looked like I was just winning across the
Mm.
board. But the one area in my life where I felt that I wasn't was in personal relationships, love relationships,
Mhm.
and this desire of mine to
Mhm.
be married that was just causing me to act out in
Mhm.
so many destructive ways.
Mhm.
And I was unconsciously pushing away from me the very thing I wanted, because I was just, um, I don't know, I was just a mess inside. So I kept drawing to me, people say you attract what you are,
Mm.
it's not necessarily what I was. I learned now, that it wasn't who I was,
Mhm.
but it was what was surfacing.
Sure.
It,
Yeah, the parts of you that were kind of coming up, and at that time that was what you knew, and till you grow and have different tools and abilities, you can
mhm.
kind of, that's when all of those things get decided upon, back, those decisions that aren't in the best interest of us, right? Get
Yeah.
decided when we're wounded, and when we don't understand how those wounds have informed the way that we think, the way that we respond to others, the way that we want other people to respond to us. A lot of woundedness in us is what drives, our choices. And I think one of the most important things we need to all grow in is this idea of self-compassion, learning to be kind to ourselves, to be gentle with ourselves, to know that we're humans, and that by nature of being human, we are fallible and we are not perfect.
Yeah. Um, but how do you're talking about getting to this place too of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
And I have really my formula that I talk about in the book is, learning ourselves, loving ourselves so that we can be ourselves unapologetically.
Mm-hmm.
So before we even get to the place of love, we've got to figure out who we are.
Mm-hmm.
That we're so much more than the sum total of our issues.
Right.
You
So
know?
true. So
Yeah.
true. I think one of the things, and then there's a question in there too, but one of the things I think that's so important is that people need to understand that they are not what has happened to them,
Mm.
that who we are is not what happened to us. And many times that is the message of trauma, of neglect, of hurt, is that this is what you're worth. This is who you are. And it's hard in that beginning process of just separating that out helps us to grow towards self-love, because we have to first understand, what part we didn't play in what happened to us. A lot of times there's a lot of false guilt around, I've dealt with a lot of women who have been sexually abused. And of course, that is by design. The person who's hurt them is always trying to give the message to them that they are complicit in that, right? And so there's a lot of untangling that has to happen for people to love themselves and to really realize that they are not what happened to them.
Wow, that is powerful. That is powerful. And that is difficult, when I think too about where the origins of shame for me came from being a teen mom. The one thing I counterbalance was the fact that I had this beautiful baby
Mm-hmm.
that I
Mm-hmm.
loved so much,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And, the fight to not associate the guilt and shame with this beautiful outcome,
Right. Right.
And
Right.
how do you not make that child feel as if
Mm-hmm.
that they're the root cause of
Right.
your because of how society may have responded and reacted to you
Right.
that caused the shame
Right.
and still saying, but no, 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 no,
Mm-hmm.
you know this is the good that came out, and
Mm-hmm.
finding the good that came
That's right.
out.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great example of how we need to untangle sometimes
Yeah,
those messages and the
yeah,
way that we were treated, or the things that happened, or the choices even that we did make.
yeah, yeah. So what have you found that have helped you or helped other women that you know on their journey to increase self-awareness so that they can learn I am more than what happened to me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the challenge is always encouraging people, including my own self, to sit with the discomfort, right?
Hmm.
To sit with,
I don't like that.
most of
Don't
us
like
don't,
don't like
right? And
that.
it's something that, we have to gain a tolerance to be able to know that we can, sit with not being okay, right? Be able to be okay not being okay, and to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. And I think one of the biggest, most difficult uncomfortable feeling to sit with is that of powerlessness.
Hmm.
And I think that learning to sit with those feelings, getting in touch with who I am, even in these feelings, in these emotions, in these experiences, like, it takes courage for us to do that. And
Can I just say this, Cheryl? When you said the feelings of powerlessness and
yes,
sitting with those feelings, I find that myself and others, the first thing we do is try to react to
right.
gain back power.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think that being empowered is a good thing,
Mm.
but taking power in a way that's not just when it's indiscriminate, when you're just kind of more of like a bull in a china shop trying to take back power, then you can create more of a mess for yourself, right?
Mm.
I don't think it's wrong to want to figure out where our power lies. But when we are doing it in a compensatory way and we don't understand that this is the work of trying to fix the shame or fix the feeling of being broken. People have said to me many times, I'm broken. And basically, what that entails is they're feeling flawed, right? They're feeling like I am not okay. And I think that powerlessness comes in with the shame, with the false guilt. A lot of times it's false guilt, believing that I did something that I didn't even do. And being able to sit with and tolerate and start to listen to your own heartbeat, much like you would for a good friend. I mean, people can do for friends what they can't, they don't allow that for themselves. They
It's
put
so
themselves
true.
in a different category
It's
almost,
so true.
So I think it's being able to extend that to yourself. I find myself working on this for me and helping my clients work on this is just be kind, be nice to yourself, just like you would a good friend. Extend that grace, extend that compassion and that gentleness and that kindness. And people grow more. No one grows in an atmosphere of shame. When we're being shamed, we don't grow, we don't develop. We shrink, we hide. Shame makes us hide. It makes us feel naked, exposed. So we're not going to grow. We're not going to challenge ourselves. We're not going to feel comfortable with our own feelings. So it's working on getting out of that mindset. And it happens when people begin to check in with themselves. This is a simple thing.
Yeah.
How am I really doing? How am I really feeling? What's coming up for me? What parts of me are surfacing today? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it embarrassment? What's going on inside of me that I can take care of and learn to take care of so that I can learn that I really am enough and I can handle this, right? We don't always believe that we can.
Right, right. And that's where that falsity continues.
Right.
Because, and I have found for me, there has to be an intentionality,
Yes, that's a good point.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because my mind, I always say when I'm alone in my own mind, I'm in a dangerous neighborhood. And and I go from 0 to 20, of thinking the worst. And I've found that being able to control my thoughts or bring them back, one by checking in with my heart,
Right.
how I feel, because just because I think a thing doesn't mean it's true.
That's right. Boy, that's so true.
You know,
So true.
yeah, and even the things I think about me,
Right. Right. Right.
that they have an origin somewhere.
Right.
That is making me feel this way, and the feelings are making me think this thing.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
if I don't halt, if I don't get intentional about trying to draw those negative thoughts back, I will begin to act on those things.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Because it all starts with a belief. It
Yes.
starts with a belief about who we are,
Right.
and whether that belief is I'm not enough, or whether that belief is I'm broken. Then the next thing is it makes you feel a certain way.
Right.
And then your thoughts, it makes you think a certain way.
They're all tied together.
And the next thing you know, you're acting on it.
Right.
And you become what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Very true. Yes. And that is just, one of the parts of, that we work on in therapy is helping people to challenge core beliefs that they may have. Look at those, see if there's evidence to support what they say that is true, right? And like you said, just because I've believed it doesn't make it true, but it feels true, and we confuse our feelings with the facts. So there's a lot of work that people can do, and on that. So I think it's very important that we understand the connections between beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and behavior. As you just said, they all connect.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, going back to where this ties into my personal life, these beliefs and these feelings made me just, when I thought I wanted love the most, I didn't have self-love. And it's hard to find love outside of yourself when you don't have love
That's so true. Yeah.
inside of yourself.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're in a constant state of asking another person to validate you.
Right.
And no matter how much they tell you how beautiful you are, how smart you are, how kind you are, you never believe it, you never internalize it because you didn't start with self-love.
Right. Right. There's no box to put that in, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So how you know, I think for me, for me personally, my getting centered and reconnected with my faith was a big part of me
Hmm.
um, formulating an identity of and a love of self
Hmm.
when I realized how much there was a God who loved me,
Right.
you know,
Right.
um, and and that the lies and the scales of my began to kind of come off my eyes to
Hmm.
realize they were I was looking for a man to validate and love me
Hmm.
when I was loved all around. I just couldn't see
Yeah.
it. I had parents who loved me. I
Hmm.
had a child who loved me. I had
Hmm.
friends who loved me. My life was full of love.
Hmm.
But the one love I didn't have, that it's important, it's good to want. It's good to
Hmm.
have. It's good to
Sure.
want relationships and marriage and it's that's a wonderful thing to have in your life.
Mhm.
But you operate from a deficit when you
Right.
don't realize the love you do have around you.
It's so true. And I think when we aren't dealing effectively with those wounds from childhood, from, our life story, it creates a hole, and the love pours in and it trickles out the bottom, and we can't hold it. The healing process helps us to hold and contain that love for self, and love, that kind of unconditional love that God would give to us. And then we can hold it and receive it when the hole is sort of plugged up at the
Mhm.
bottom. And we
Mhm.
don't often know that that's what's happening. It just feels like, why is it never enough for me? Right? That's something people say. Why is it never enough that, I do have people and I never feel it? And I
Right.
think it comes back down to those early experiences. We have to tell our stories, and that's what you do so beautifully in the book.
Thank you.
Telling our story is paramount to healing. Telling our story. Um, Not everyone is called to tell it in such a vulnerable way as you have, in such a public way. Although I think if we didn't have people like you doing that, it wouldn't give courage to people to tell their stories anywhere, right?
Mm.
So you're leading by example with vulnerability, authenticity, transparency, telling your story.
Thank you.
And that is so needed and so important for people because it will free them to tell their story. And it's in telling our story that we get the opportunity to really link emotionally with our story and then make changes about what we believe or think about our story. Because otherwise, we're locked into the narrative that someone else probably dictated about our story.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. So, telling our story is one of the ways we build self-love. Are there
Mm-hmm.
other
Yes.
ways that you can share with our audience about to how to really embrace and begin to love who you are?
Yeah. That's a big question, a big ask, and I think that it's one that we're always
Yeah,
looking for answers
it's
to.
true.
So, I wouldn't say that I have all the answers to that. Of course, no one does. But I think that if we see it as a journey, the saying of progress, not perfection,
Perfection.
right? You said
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That we're always looking to see, are we moving toward that? And how can I
Right.
know that? How can I sort of, for lack of a better word, measure or know that I'm moving closer to self-love and being accepting of myself? And I think it has a lot to do with the peace and the groundedness we feel inside,
Mhm.
when we're able to be in conflict and stay grounded, when we're able to be in criticism and stay grounded,
Yep.
when
Yep.
we're able to even know that someone may not like us very much and we can stay grounded.
Yes.
These are ways that we can know that we've increased in our ability to love ourselves. It's a detangling. It's a separating of the parts of us that have gotten sort of meshed together,
Mhm.
where my opinion of myself is based upon your opinion of me. That's something that has to be uncoupled. It has to be detangled. So that's a way that we work toward, centering ourselves on I want to be the one responsible. And if we have a faith, we might say myself and God want to be the ones responsible for deciding who I am. And I'm not going to give my power, back to the comment about power earlier, I'm
Mhm.
not going to give my power away to those around me to define me unless I trust them.
Mm.
If I trust them, then I may take input, but they're not going to define who I am. And that's going to help purify, my concept of who I am.
I like that. Input, but they don't get to define.
Right. We
The
take it
ones
under
who love,
consider.
right?
Right.
The ones who you love and trust,
Right.
and who are well-meaning. Um,
Right.
you listen, and you figure out what to take and what
Right.
to
Eat the
discard.
grape, spit out the pit,
That's
whatever is not right.
it's a filter.
Yes.
There's a
But we
filter
need,
there.
at times we do need feedback because
Mhm.
we know that we have blind spots.
Right.
We can't see ourselves completely clearly.
Mhm.
And so those who love us, if we trust that they have our best interest at heart, can give us feedback that will be helpful to say, this is how you're presenting yourself. This is how I'm experiencing you. And, giving us the benefit of the doubt in that too. That can help us to know ourselves better as well.
Right. Right. And I think you said it, but I also I want to emphasize that sometimes this comparing ourselves with others
Mm.
can really
Oh
help
boy.
us backslide off
Oh,
of our
yes.
journey,
Yes.
off our journey to self-love.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we live in a age in which we're ripe with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Social media. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing more and more people taking fasts and breaks from social
Right.
media because people are just there and just sort of portraying, living their best lives and
Mm-hmm.
being their best selves, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't really know that. You don't know anyone's life.
Nope. Let's
You,
show the best, hide the rest.
yeah,
Yeah. That's what I say.
it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you have taken 10 pictures and you scroll through and you say, oh, that's a
Mm-hmm.
real authentic one of me. Put that one up.
Uh-huh.
You know?
That's right. I love that you're bringing this point out because to me, this is critical. I think we live in an age where, with a lot of the social media platforms, where people are doing a lot of comparing, and they aren't comparing it to something that's realistic, or we're not getting a whole picture. And then you walk away feeling, oh, I didn't get to have that. I didn't get to do that. I didn't do that for my kids. Oh my gosh, look at how much better they are than I. And it breeds this discontent. It breeds a sense of, I'm never enough. I don't do enough. I'm not enough. I don't experience enough. I didn't do enough for my children. And I think that people need to be aware, if you're struggling with that, take a check on how often and how much you're ingesting comparative kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, one of the things that I've learned in on my journey of self-love is that I understanding and unpacking this notion of purpose,
Mm,
because I can focus more on me when I feel that I'm uniquely designed and equipped
that's great.
and
That's great.
here for a
Love
reason,
that. Yeah.
on this earth for a reason.
Hmm.
And then my embracing of that notion of purpose, it helps me not focus as much on
Hmm.
other
That's
people.
great. And that's unique to you,
Yeah.
your journey.
Yeah, my journey. And I tell people, women, this all the time, because sometimes, when you speak or when you coach, or people, and you talk on this notion of purpose, people will say, well, I want to figure out my purpose. I do a
Hmm.
lot of work with executives and leaders around values and values clarification and purpose. And they speak about purpose as if it's a singular thing.
Mm.
But what I really believe, and have said this often in different places, is I don't believe that there's an all-knowing, however you understand God, being who created and gave life on average of 80 years to humans on average, and one thing to do. The
Right.
math doesn't add up.
Right.
The math doesn't add up for
Right.
me. It just
Right.
doesn't.
Right.
And
And that's
so
freeing
that
to
is.
know that you don't have
It
to
is.
find the one purpose.
Right, right.
Hmm.
It's purpose for season.
Mm.
Because
That's good.
when I think about where I was in my 20s as a young professional,
Yeah.
the jobs I did, the roles I had, the community work I did, the relationships I had, those were all meaningful. And I know I made an impact.
Mm-hmm.
I made an impact. And so, should I say I wasn't purposed?
Mm-hmm.
No, I was purposed to be in those places and places, have those friendships, relationships, connections, those duties at work, whatever it was. That was my purpose for that time.
Mm-hmm.
And now I may be in a new season in my 30s, a new season in my 40s, and whatever the season calls for.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I am uniquely designed to do. And no one on this planet, there's never been another you. There will never be another you.
Right.
So be the best you that you can, because anybody else that's trying to be you, you are designer's original. They're a knockoff imitation. And when you try to be them, you're a knockoff imitation. Be a designer's original. I think that's the
great.
retail coming in. I don't know if I told you all, but I used to be an assistant buyer. So, I used to be in the retail world. So, yeah. So, be a designer's original.
I love that. That's good.
And when you are, when it's Fashion Week, you can strut yourself. And you don't have to worry about the model coming down the runway before you or after you, because you are uniquely designed and purposed for this
That's
season.
Great.
So as we begin to just wrap up, this has been just such a great conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
A really great reminder for me on my journey towards better, because I would say, and I think you would agree, we don't arrive.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We do not arrive. This is an ongoing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And in this journey, some days I'm right on, and other days I miss the mark.
Right.
But to the point you made earlier, remembering to find grace and compassion for ourselves, the same that we might give others, and really try to internalize that and just show up as my better self.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, I think it's just I just really just want to say that I appreciate the book, the work that you're doing, getting the message out there. So, as I said earlier, so authentically, so vulnerably, giving others the courage to tell their stories. I think that's the most important thing that I would close with, is just, encourage people to find someone to tell their story to.
Yeah. It need not be the world.
Right. Not everyone's cut out for that.
Well, and I will say, because not everyone can live under the burden of the blowback.
That's right.
That might come.
You have to feel safe. You have to feel safe with that. And I think, but it's, this is what your work is doing, is it's getting that out there, the courage to tell your story. It's your story. And then secondly, the release from perfectionism, this epidemic of perfectionism. It is killing us all slowly, and we all need the freedom from it. So focusing on better, gives us a strategy to step away from perfection.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of my better journey.
It's been a pleasure.
Like I said, you've been one of the women that have poured into my life, and I'm grateful and thankful for you. And so, better audience, as we close out today, I just wanted to remind you of ways that you can hear more podcasts. If you haven't seen season 1, it's available on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and on other platforms, many others. So if you don't want to have to remember them all, you can just go to my website, www.drshaibutler.com. That's www.drshaibutler.com. And or go to Linktree to better.notperfect, and you can find the many ways that you can watch and listen. And if you haven't gotten the book, I encourage you to get it. You can get it on Amazon, and you can get it if you live in the capital region of New York. And I know many of you don't, because this is a global podcast. But if you do, it's in the Open Door Bookstore in Schenectady and other local venues. So be mindful, and that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we're running our way to better, not perfect. So until next time, thank you.